Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show.
I want to welcome everybody to Principal Podcast today. We're very fortunate today to have Neil Crofts on, co-founder and CEO of his organization. And it was very unique in the way he's approached it with the name he's given it as well, which he'll share with you about his company. And we're going to learn about his culture, what he believes in, and how he's become successful in this enterprise. So we always start off by just asking our guests a core question that drives everything. Tell me a bit about how you got off to start your company and what was the process you used in thinking about sharing your business to be able to build a professional services firm.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. It's really great to be here. So the company is called Holos, or it's known as Holos. More formally, it's Holos Change Limited, but it generally goes by Holos, which is Greek for whole, and whole as in complete, as in the complete person, as opposed to whole as in perforation. So I was head of strategy for an internet consultancy during the dot-com boom. So back in 98, 99, 2000. Called Razorfish, which people may have heard of. It was quite famous at the time. And one of the things that became clear was it really didn't matter how good the technology was that we delivered to our clients. If they didn't have a culture that was adapted to a digital environment, it didn't add value. And I became fascinated, maybe obsessed, by the question, how do you intentionally create the kind of culture that leads to sustained success in a disrupted environment? And that's really what I've been working on ever since. I've written 4 books on the subject. I have consulted with lots of different companies, coached many people. And then in 2009, BP were looking for a different way of doing leadership development. And they recruited something that they called the BP faculty, which was, in the end, about 130 independent consultants. So consultants, facilitators, coaches, to do leadership development. And we operated like a sort of in-house consultancy, not employees, but contracted in to do
Independent contractors, right?
Exactly. But working together. It was a really nice sort of hybrid arrangement. And then, as you will be only too familiar, BP had a terrible accident in the Gulf of Mexico, and 17 people died. It cost them $40 billion. It cost the coastline a lot more, and we went from doing fairly ordinary leadership and team development type stuff to being the front end of a culture change project. And we did that all over the world for about 3 years. I think I personally went to 35 countries doing that. And of course, in the Malcolm Gladwell construct of things, that's your 10,000 hours of practice and then some. So we became really, and we were already good enough to get to do the gig with BP in the first place. But, when you have that kind of practice in a challenging situation, you get to be really good. And then the people who'd set all of that up at BP were recruited effectively to do the same thing at Barclays Bank after LIBOR and PPI. So we got to do it all again.
Yeah, exactly, with LIBOR, right?
Yeah. And then there were 2 of us who thought, this capability, these people are far too good to allow our relationship to be mediated by a client who isn't going to keep doing this forever. So we formed Holos, and we basically said to everyone, you're all in by default. We're going to do.
You didn't have to do any recruiting necessarily. You already had a self-made team. I looked at your organization chart; it's pretty vast. So you had a big group.
Yeah, we did have, I think, about 130, and then people have joined us since, obviously, because it's an attractive place to be. So we have no employees, we have no offices, and we operate as much as a consultancy as we do a movement, as we do a community. And we often say that we're really a community of leadership geeks. We like nothing better than exploring the minutiae of how leadership really works in organizations and how teamwork really works in organizations.
What I think is unique, two of them, BP and LIBOR, it's crisis management. I mean, you had to come in there
Yeah.
when there were things that occurred that were unplanned, and you might have been smooth sailing going along, and all of a sudden, boom, you hit a bump that's not a real speed bump, it's a wall, and you got to figure out how to navigate through that. So congratulations for that, because it's trial by fire.
Yeah. Well, not many people like to use the word, but cultural crisis. We have a lot of credibility. We've done a lot of work in that area, both at a corporate level and at a team level.
Yeah, that's huge. So when you look at specific problems that you go into organizations to help them solve, besides what we just discussed, what are the factors do you look at, and why is that kind of important to you, Neil?
So specifically, we work to enable high performing teams, and we work to enable high performance leadership. And the thing that there's a number of different things, but the genesis of all of this was this idea of how do you create sustained success in a disrupted environment.
Right.
And the answer to the question is leadership. But what do we mean by leadership? What kind of leadership? A lot of companies use the words leadership and management as if they're interchangeable. That's deeply unhelpful. Management is fundamentally the skill of keeping things reliable. Leadership is fundamentally the skill of creating change. And in a disrupted environment, you need both. And you can't segregate the two, because if you segregate the two, then someone's got to sell the innovation back into the part of the organization that isn't doing change. So actually, you need individuals who do both, who do management and leadership according to what's relevant. And the management is relatively straightforward. And a lot of people our kind of age and probably younger have spent their whole careers doing management. They've built their whole careers on management. And the thing about management is it's basically doing the same thing over and over again. I mean, marginal changes, improvements, that sort of thing, but it's fundamentally about reliability. Whereas leadership is about change. So that means doing something you've never done before. You don't know what the outcome is going to be, and you've got to take people on the journey with you. And the challenge with leadership is it requires people to make themselves vulnerable. And in a job, making yourself vulnerable is uncomfortable and unreasonable, but it is the reality of what leadership is about, and it is the reality of change. And in a lot of organizations, there isn't enough psychological safety for people to take that risk. And so in a lot of places, leadership doesn't happen, or doesn't happen much. And I'm sure, Dennis, that you will have had this experience of being in a meeting and saying, wouldn't it be great if we did this new thing? And people saying, oh, no, we don't do stuff like that around here.
No, that's not in our book, right?
And so what happens very often is people talk about leadership, the desire, we need people to lead and all this sort of thing. But when it comes down to it, they discourage it.
Well, it's fascinating. I mean, out of college, I went to work at Xerox Corporation.
Okay, interesting case.
One of the largest corporations in the U.S. at the time, well known, had the biggest market share on what they did in office products, and it was very structured. Then I went through the organization, got into management and all that good stuff. And yes, I was a rebel because I was constantly fostering change.
Yeah.
And after 7 years of corporate life, I decided, nah, you know what? Time for me to try something else, because I think I've reached my apex where I don't want to fight constant battles with and the other one that's known in the U.S. was IBM. And blue suit, white shirt, blue tie, the whole ball of wax. And, I look at those people and they were so talented, but they were so hindered. They were never allowed to lead. They were allowed to become managers and very structured and disciplined. So I understand completely what you're talking about.
So Xerox is the case study, because Xerox found innovation so difficult that they created Xerox PARC. You remember?
Oh,
and they
almost a research center.
so they outsourced the innovation. The innovators couldn't sell the ideas back to the mothership, and in the end, they invited someone to come around and see what they'd invented. And
Which was the internet. Which was the internet.
well,
Ethernet
it was
was
Steve Jobs who they invited to come
Yeah.
around.
Oh, I know. It's an amazing story. And it was right
Yeah,
there
yeah,
in Palo Alto, and I worked in Santa Clara, 12
yeah,
miles south. So
yeah.
trust me, I lived that story. So with that being said, tell me about who the ideal clients are for your organization right now, and who's your stakeholder or decision maker who you call on in those accounts.
Yeah, so our ideal clients are really any company or organization actually who
Okay.
who needs or wants to take culture seriously. That typically means they're over a certain size. I think under about 2,000 people is
Your
you know
sweet spot?
no, under 2,000 is not enough.
Oh, not
The
enough. Okay.
No, companies that size, the culture is almost, and we have worked with smaller companies, but culture is almost by osmosis in smaller companies.
Right.
When you get over 2,000 people, culture starts to, um,
Magnet.
yeah, and it starts to be defined by the dominant person in the room, and that's not always desirable. So you get what you get. I mean, culture happens anyway, and it's defined by the unless you're intentional about it. Culture is defined by the dominant characters in the room, and if they're not representing culture in a positive, good way, you end up with a culture that is not going in the direction of your strategy. And so what we talk about is let's articulate what your vision is, where you're trying to get to, and then what's the target culture that you need in order to get from here to there, and then you need, especially you need the exec team to reliably role model that culture even under pressure, in order to start the process, and then you can start to work with the rest of the organization.
So
Our
they're 2,000 plus,
Yeah.
multinational, all
Yeah.
UK, European
No,
Union.
we work globally,
Okay.
and it could be public sector. It's typically corporations because they have the budget, but
Right.
it could be public sector.
Okay.
And our stakeholder is typically the HR director.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, it's an interesting point though, because if you ask corporations, who has accountability for culture, they the answer is not usually very convincing.
No.
But
And
in my view, the exec team should be deciding what the culture should be, the target culture should be, and they should be delegating the implementation of that culture to the HR department.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's more of an execution level job
exactly.
than it is a decision-making job.
Exactly.
So when that happens, give me an idea. How do you get clients aware and interested in what you have to provide? Let's look at some possible methods. Past customers, so it's referral based, which is always the best because trust is already established. Communication via the internet in terms of a marketing campaign to corporations that you think would be good prospects. You could do social media, LinkedIn, a variety of other tools or social media, and or you've even probably entertained maybe doing seminars when you go to large groups and speak at conferences. And finally, podcasting. So what do you find of all those? Which ones are you using and which ones yielding the highest return?
So our sort of starting point is that we pay a commission to all of our faculty for introductions.
Okay.
So there is an expectation on all of us as a community that if we've got a lead or a relationship which is suitable for Holos, that we introduce them. One of the most effective things so far really has been people, HR directors changing job, and taking us with them.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. But so as you mentioned there, this is trust in this is huge. You know, if you're an HR director and you think your exec team have a cultural problem, that's a pretty tricky conversation to have.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Very sensitive.
yeah, and then you've got to have that conversation with your exec team that you're a member of, but you then got to have a conversation which is, okay, I know these people who I trust to come in and mess with your heads. And that again, trust there is a real issue. So we put a lot of energy into building trust with the exec team, with the people that we're going to work with, not just with the HR director, but with the people we're going to actually be working with. And you really want to build that trust before you get into the room, as much as possible. So we do that's kind of the baseline, the foundation. We do a lot online. We do a lot through LinkedIn. We do a lot. We publish all the white papers. We put a lot of thought pieces out there. We put a lot of stuff on our website. All the normal stuff.
I mean, I saw you've done the books, as you mentioned.
Yeah. With my co-founder and I wrote this book a while ago now, but this is really
I love the name, Stealing from the Future. I love that.
Well, and that's the point about this sustainable, sustained success in a disrupted environment, because at all levels, and whether it's at a personal level or a corporate level or at a national or a global level, if you're running a factory and you think, well, I need to make a big profit this year, so I'm going to cut back on maintenance, that's stealing from the future. Every day that you wear yourself out, being stressed and exhausted with your work, you're stealing from your future. So it works at all levels, and that the whole principle of sustained success is a model which you can sustain at all of those levels.
No, I love that. I mean, the concept is good, and the way you articulate it is really well done. I mean, you can describe it as an individual, a branch, a manager, a company, an enterprise. I mean, so all of them have that challenge in front of them. So that's well done. When you look at what you sell as an intangible initially, how do you measure success for what you guys do?
Well, that's a really, really interesting question. So I think historically, people just believed in this stuff. Enough people just believed in it. HR directors, they believed that if we do leadership development, that's a good thing. I think AI has shifted that, and I think a lot of corporations are looking at AI as a way of cutting costs in many, many areas. I suspect they'll find it doesn't actually work in the end in some of those areas.
What you do, it's not necessarily the path to choose. In a lot of ways, I would agree it's effective, but how do you measure AI in leadership?
Well, I think what they're hoping is that they can use AI to do leadership development.
Yeah, that's
yeah, exactly. So I don't think that'll work. I mean, I'm sure it'll help. Of course, it'll be helpful in many ways, and we use it, and it is helpful, but it won't replace leadership development for sure. So we are we're working. So we work with some work from the Center for Creative Leadership, who've looked at this problem of return on investment, and they reckon that somewhere between 12 and 17 times spend is the return on investment. So if you're looking for a wise place to invest your money as a corporation, investing in leadership development has a really huge return. So we've created our own ROI calculator, which is online, and you put in the number of people, the expected future tenure of those people, and the cost of the program, and then there's a whole bunch of different areas like retention and increased productivity and all of the stuff you'd expect.
Very smart.
Yeah, and so you can say how much return you think you're going to get on each of those things, and then at the bottom it gives you a figure.
How accurate has that been?
Now,
In theory, it's outstanding.
yeah, I mean, as it's very, very difficult to quantify. You know, it's if one leader is 10% more productive in a 10-year career, and they have an impact on 10 people, which enables them to be 10% more productive for 20 years.
It compounds.
Yeah, the return is huge, but it's very difficult to say what actually made the difference.
Oh, Neil, trust me, I understand. And what I do closely is the same thing. So let me pose a question to you. I am a client of interest. I heard about you guys. I reached out to you in some method, and you or one of your associates contacts me. From contact to closing an agreement to go forward, and then periods of contracts you write with that client for 6 months, a year, or statement of work and SOW that you came up with. Tell me the time frames.
So there's a couple of things. We're very collaborative with our clients. So we form a team that exists in the space between the two organizations.
Okay.
And we are very open, very transparent, very collaborative. There is a really important diagnostic phase, which is also a trust building phase.
Okay.
So we have a number of different diagnostic tools that we use. They're behavioral diagnostics, they're context diagnostics, they're psychometrics. And if we're working with a team, we would typically use those as part of the trust building process. We may also do interviews, either with all of the team members or what we call vertical slice interviews if you're working with a whole organization.
Mhm.
Obviously, we absorb whatever information they've already got. So whether that's pulse surveys or strategic documents or whatever, or their own competencies, behavioral frameworks, anything like that. And so that process typically takes some time, but probably if the client is on it, you can do that stuff in less than a month.
I was going to say 30 to 60 days, somewhere in that
Yeah,
ballpark.
exactly. And then then at the same time as you're doing that, then you're scheduling your first interventions. So you might well be getting into a first intervention in about a month or just over a month, something like that. And then depending on what you're trying to do, it can take a period of time. I mean, when we did the culture change work at Barclays, we had a process which about 130,000 people were reached in 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, in a very potent way, which made a big difference. I'm not going to give away the secrets of how we do that, but
you don't have to. But I was just curious, how do you reach the dynamics of 130,000 people in 6 months? But if that's part of the secret sauce, you keep it.
No, you create a movement. That's what you do.
Okay.
And we've created movements in a number of organizations on a number of different topics. But I mean, it all depends. That very largely depends on where the exec team are, because if the exec team are already role modeling the target culture, then you can
breeds it.
Well, you can get on with creating the movement. But if the exec team are not role modeling the target culture, there's no benefit in creating the movement. So the exec team because then you set expectations that the organization can't meet.
They can't meet.
So the exec team and very often the HR team, because the HR team have to be adjusting their systems and processes. How you recruit people, how you reward people have to be aligned with the target culture.
Well, when you deal with a bigger corporation, and God bless you, Neil. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of egos,
Yeah.
personalities,
Yeah.
people who are resistant to change. Where we want
Careful, careful, careful.
we
People
want
are,
them to we want them
yeah,
to foster change
yeah,
and
yeah,
bring in innovation.
yeah.
And so
People aren't
therefore,
resistant to change. People are resistant to change that they haven't been bought into.
I would agree. That's well said. Well said.
And all change happens at the habit level. So
Yep.
what you're working to do is engage people with why they would want to change a habit.
Okay.
And the frame that we use is context, cause, conditions.
Okay.
So first of all, let's align on what the context is, because people make different decisions when they have a different context. If you take the COVID vaccine as an example, and I get that that's contentious, but this is exactly the point. If everyone had the same context around the COVID vaccine, most people would have taken the same decision. But the reality was that people had very different contexts around the COVID vaccine, so people took different decisions. So first of all, you have to align around context. It's not me, the CEO, doing this to you. There is a context happening out there in the world, which means we have to do something differently. So
Like that.
first of all, align around context. Secondly, cause. What are we actually trying to achieve? In a conventional organization, which is prioritizing reliability, maybe Xerox Corporation at the time, where the priority is reliability, not change. In that environment, you don't really need a cause. You don't really need a vision for where you're trying to get to, because you're basically trying to do the same thing over and over again.
Correct.
If you're in a transformational space, you need to know where you're trying to get to. Otherwise, how can you delegate? What are you basing your decisions on? How are you prioritizing if you don't know where you're trying to get to? So
You've got to have vision. Right.
got to have a vision, and that vision has to be like an address. So it's not good enough to say we want to be the best photocopier company in the world. That's not an address. That's a vague statement of
It's
intent.
too vague. Right.
It has to be a definable destination, like an address. So if I were to leave my house to come and visit you in Florida without having your address, the chances of me actually meeting up with you are really quite small, because I've got nothing to base my decisions on. Whereas if I know what your address is, then I can make the decisions and end up coming and meeting you. So it has to be a definable destination. It has to be beyond what you currently know how to achieve. If you know how to achieve it, it's an objective, not a vision. And people, that's a real mind job for people to get into that space. And the third thing is, it has to be inspiring to all stakeholders. It's no good if it's only inspiring to a few senior executives and shareholders. It has to also be inspiring to your customers and your most junior employees. And then the third bit is the conditions. What are the conditions that you need to put in place in order to achieve your vision, given the context you're operating in? And those conditions are both cultural and systems and processes. So how are you going to pay people? How are you going to recruit people? Systems and processes. What are the tools that people are going to use? Okay. AI, digital tools, whatever. And we don't do that, but we work with the teams who do that. And then what's the culture? What's the target culture that you need? How do people need to actually behave? What are the habits that people need to have in order to deliver the vision?
When you look at it all together, it's actually you're putting together a puzzle, and you've got to make sure that all the pieces fit, and you guys coordinate all the time, to me, for lack of a better term of it, or an analogy. Customers you work with and you engage them, how often do they stay with you for a long period of time, or is it you got to constantly be sourcing for new clients?
So I would say some clients, we're a strong flavor. We're like a double espresso. And some clients really like the double espresso, and we stay with them forever. And some clients find double espresso too strong, and
one and done. Here you go.
And it doesn't last so long. And we're looking for those clients. And some clients, of course, never engage us at all, because it's too, I talked earlier about vulnerability. Someone we tell a story to an HR director or a head of L&D or something, and they've then got to go and sell that story to someone else. That it's very rare that they are. I mean, maybe there's a pilot that they can decide on or something, but normally they've got to go and sell it to some other people,
Right.
even if it's only the participants that they've got to sell it to. And sometimes that story is already too strong a flavor, and so we don't get in the door. But that's life.
Well, the challenge there is that your selling is limited to how good that person could be to articulate your vision.
Often,
So, I mean, you're selling, and they have to take that, and now you're relying on them to do what you should be doing. So,
Yeah,
how do you get to more? Is there a better way to get to those stakeholders than having to go through that channel?
and there isn't really. The best thing is to do a pilot.
Okay.
And once we can get in front of people, magic happens in the room. And when magic happens in the room, and that's a silly word to use, isn't it? But it is, there is a sort of
I
alchemy
get it.
that goes on when the penny drops and people suddenly perceive a whole different possibility to the one that they thought existed.
Correct. Well, and because they may not have been cognizant or aware of what could be actual reality for them. Because if it's not done the right way, they'll never know.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Okay. All right. Well, I can't believe it, but our time is up, my man. It's been a wonderful time chatting with you. Our 30 minutes just flew by. I find it fascinating, all the different components that you put into what you're doing and your history. And I love the Xerox case study. That's pretty amazing. You and I didn't know that. You and I did not know that when we started, I believe. So that was kind of an interesting evolution of what occurred. But no, it's so true. I mean, I lived it. So, I understand exactly what you're talking about. Neil, how can people reach you and your organization? What's the most effective way to do that?
Okay, so the website is holoschange.com.
Okay.
And I'm also happy for people to email me, Neil, Neil, at holoschange.com.
Okay. Any other methods or anything coming up in the future for you guys that people maybe want to aware of?
Nothing particular. We do a sort of infrequent series of breakfast roundtables, which we hold in the UK. We also do an infrequent series of webinars, just for people to come and get a taste. I mean, I think this is part of the deal, is that you have to taste these things. You can't just read it on a page.
Great.
And that the other option is just to get in touch and let's see if we can run a pilot somehow. We did a trade show recently, which was great fun. We have yet to see what the results are like. But it's again, giving people a taste and an experience of how we operate.
Neil, enjoy the conversation, and I hope you have as well. And best of luck to you and your company as you grow forward.
Very much. Thank you. I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you, Dennis.
You're welcome, Neil.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you've learned valuable lessons and strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.